Raindrops fall from the sky. They may be small, but together they make a mighty ocean. In the same way, your commitment to doing good in the world enables the Rotary Foundation to fund the projects that you care about. Last year, even during a pandemic, hundreds of thousands of donors like you gave more than $440 million. Your generosity allowed the foundation to fund more than 2,000 global grants, creating opportunities for people everywhere to respond to their community's unique needs. A $15 donation could buy polio vaccines. A water filter cost only $50, and $100 could provide COVID-19 training. You supported causes such as fighting disease, building strong communities, and promoting lasting peace. So whether you gave $1 or $1 million, you gave help and hope. The people whose lives you've touched, the families, the parents, the children, thank you. And so do we.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. This is the third in the series of 3 weekends in a row that we've asked you to participate in assemblies. I thank you for coming out. I know it's early, but what a great way to kick off Foundation Month. Plus, it's my pleasure to remind you in District 5520, it's Daylight Savings Day, so don't forget your clocks. And for some of you, it's the start of zone in Arizona for 26-27. Learn a lot, John Drewsome, and have a great time. It's the time of your life for you and Sharon. It's going to start, and we are so proud of both of you, our governor-elect. All right, I'm going to throw this part to Jesse Allen, who's going to go through a little bit of Q&A information. Jesse?
Yeah, this is just a comment to everybody that, first of all, as far as muting, throughout the session, I'll be muting anybody that's got an open mic. But if you need to talk, unmute yourself and talk. I'm not trying to squelch that, but I will keep things muted. And when we do get to Q&A positions, I think our thought is that it seems to work pretty well just for people to unmute themselves and talk. If you raise your hand, hopefully we'll see you on. But I think we're a reasonable sized group where we can just unmute and talk. And as always, keep your cameras on. We like to see everybody. Thank you.
All right, now let me talk a bit about our presenters this morning. First, let's talk about Rick Akins. He's a club foundation chair for the Rotary Club of Rio Rancho Sunrise. He's a past district governor. Let me tell you, I love Rick for his energy and hard work on any project he addresses. The beautiful care he showers on his lovely wife, Roz, and the fact that Rick doesn't make me feel short. Second, let's talk about Eric Thompson, Major Gift Officer for Zone 26 and 27. He's based out of Rotary International in Evanston, Illinois. If you've never been there, you've got to go someday. It's the most wonderful experience of your life. I know it changed mine in looking at Rotary. Eric states that leadership is the drive to eradicate polio. It's one of the most inspiring stories in modern philanthropy, particularly since he has seen firsthand the impact of polio on members of his family. Plus, let me point out, I think he's a nice guy. Tom Lindsay, Endowment Chair. This year for District 5520, another past district governor, past foundation chair, past trainer. He's very talented, coming from the Rotary Club of Deming. He's married to one of my favorites, Linda. They're good people. Lucinda General, Zone 26 Rotary Coordinator. And this is kind of tricky for me. She's Rotary Coordinator, and then she's for membership. Past district governor. She has served as Council of Legislation 2 times. Zone 2627 Treasurer, Chair of Multiple District Pets Alliance, co-chair in District 5490, 5510 merger, and as a representative for 3 Rotary presidents. Lucinda, you need a 5th cup of coffee. Lucinda likes to say, together we will grow Rotary, and I believe she does, people. Bob Rogers, who's changing his shirt as we speak, in Polio now, zone coordinator for Zone 27. Along this journey today, you're going to have the pleasure to meet one of Rotary's happiest people, which with his passion, it is all truly contagious. Bob is a living testament to the good of having polio, if that's at all possible. He has used that statement, let your mess become your message. He has become a great ambassador in action to stop this disease globally in its tracks. Nikki Mcdonald is chairperson of the Polio Committee for District 5520. Nikki also is a polio survivor, understanding that she has not made it her only story. Nikki is one of the most efficient individuals I have had the pleasure in in District 5520, is blessed to have her. Besides retired banker, is always a good fit for District Foundation. Bob Reed, District 5520's Global Grant Chair. Bob is a foundation person by trade. Writing grants is his forte. When I did the ask for the Grant Global Chair at the start of this year, I had an angel on my shoulder. For little did I realize how much he would teach me. He's a Rotarian and on the foundation team. You will shortly see his strength and care for others always. I take a moment during this foundation month. We are so fortunate to have a group of Rotarians working for you on the team who give them themselves for this district, their clubs and their members. Thank you to each of you. Tom Walker, Zone Endowment Major Gifts Advisor for Zone 26. That's a mouthful. Past district governor, foundation chair, possibly 16 years, vice governor for many, many governors, considered the godfather of Rotary in District 5520. And as so many feel, he's a member of my family. It is now my pleasure for you to sit back to hear words of wisdom, guidance, and passion from my Rotary Foundation friends and soon to be yours. Rick, take it away from Rotary Club.
Linda, let me make one quick suggestion. Would you like a picture, a screenshot?
I would love one.
Okay, so before you get into it, everybody, let's see, Donna, Janine, Kevin, if you got a camera, turn it on. But we'll do a screenshot. Everybody smiling. There's Janine. Hey, Janine. Okay, we got a picture. Thank you, Linda.
Okay. Once again, it's indeed my pleasure to present Rick from the Rotary Club of Rio Rancho Sunrise.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you this morning. And when Linda had called me and asked me if I would talk about district grants a little bit, from the standpoint of a smaller club, I thought, well, that's great. I would be glad to do that. Well, you know, it was a privilege and an honor to serve as your district governor in 2004, 2005. And a couple of years after that, I was the foundation chair for this district. So grants really have helped me in Rotary and our clubs. But what I want to say, I kind of think of the Rotary International Foundation as the heartbeat of Rotary. If we didn't have the foundation, we wouldn't be able to do our programs, wouldn't be able to do our projects without their help. And it really makes a difference. So, you know, as I traveled the district as district governor, and I did travel to a lot of clubs as foundation chair and did programs. I'll remember one time I went in this club and this guy in the back, I'm not going to say how old he was because I'm getting there, but he said, oh man, you know what they're going to do? They're going to talk about money, want money. Well, yes, we do. So, but there was a couple of questions that I was asked many, many times as Ross and I did travel the district. One was, why should our club members contribute to the RI Foundation? The second question was, our club is mostly interested in projects in our community. How can the RI Foundation help us? Well, I'd say I'm glad you asked. These are important questions, and many years ago, the RI Foundation funded international grants, projects in Rotary, and that's kind of pretty much what they did. Well, they made a change, and this change was allowing us to use district designated funds, we refer to as DDF, for district grants. And that is an opportunity for clubs to use Rotary money in their projects they're doing in their communities. And so it's a great opportunity, and that kind of shut down the question of, well, we just want to work in our community. And a lot of clubs do, and that's fine. And of course, a lot of clubs are involved in international global grants, and that's great too. There's just so many opportunities with the foundation to use this foundation money. Now, a lot of you, it's going to sound like old hat, but hopefully we've got some new people here that might be interested in knowing what is a DDF money. I want to use an example. As a rule, our district normally contributes about $300,000 to the Rotary annual fund. And I say annual fund, we all know that's very important because we want money to come back to our district. But it draws interest in about 3 years. They divide that up 50-50. Half of that, 150,000, would be DDF, district designated funds. Well, the other half goes to the World Fund for other projects and global grants. But when they made a change, they said, well, you can use half your DDF money for local projects. And I'm telling you right now, especially Tom Walker knows this, boy, I mean, the clubs go, hey, that's great. We're going to take advantage of that. The annual fund is unrestricted, and that's what comes back to the district. That's why we say we would like for you as members of our district to contribute to the annual fund. Restricted money is money that's goes to the foundation for a specific project or something like polio, and that's great too. It just doesn't come back in DDF money. So that's kind of the difference right there. Well, I'd like to tell you a little bit about my club that I belong to. It's the Rio Rancho Sunrise Rotary Club. Our motto is, quote, small but mighty, unquote. We currently only have 12 members. We were chartered April 16th, 2007. So if my math is correct, this coming April will be 15 years old, a very young club. But one thing we've done since 2007, we've applied each year for a district grant. And I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But before I talk about 3 examples of how a small club uses district designated funds and what we've done, I'd like to kind of set the stage a little bit. As club foundation chair, and hopefully every club in our district has a foundation chair, it's very important. There are 4 things that I do, and these are just suggestions. Everybody works a little bit different, but here's what I do as foundation chair in our club. The first is make sure we have club goals each year for our club. The first one is E-Ray. We're all familiar, every Rotarian every year. All our members contribute to the foundation, but we must maintain $100 average per capita, which we do. And usually, sometimes it's been, excuse me, double that. Second, continue to be a Paul Harris club. Well, what is a Paul Harris club? A Paul Harris club is when each of your members are a Paul Harris fellow. We became a Paul Harris club in 2015, 2016, and we have maintained that every year as members come in, and sometimes they go, but as new members come in, we make sure that they become a Paul Harris fellow. And I'll give you a little insight, an easy way to do that in a little bit. Third, this is the big deal, apply for a district grant each year. The second thing is have an annual Rotary International Foundation program, and November is a great time to do it because this is Foundation Month. But have a program to educate our members, because we do have new members that come in, and they need to understand the workings of the foundation and why we have a foundation. The third thing is I always do an annual letter to each member. I think that's very important. And with this letter, what I put in there, it's very simple and short because I'm a simple guy. I don't like it too complicated. One is the members' Rotary number. A lot of members, especially in larger clubs, have no idea what their Rotary number is, and they need that to sign on the international website. Another thing is Paul Harris Fellow recognition amount and the amount needed for them to obtain the next level of Paul Harris Fellow. A lot of people don't know that. We've had members that had $850 towards a second Paul Harris Fellow. And they say, well, I'll just write an extra $50 check on my E-Ray and I'll get my second Paul Harris Fellow. That's an example of how that works. Another thing is foundation recognition points and how they work. And when I was foundation chair, this was my hot button. Because once you become a Paul Harris Fellow, you start accumulating points. Every dollar contributed is a point. So what's the big deal? Well, let me give you an example. Our small club one year awarded 19 Paul Harris Fellows. We had spouses, friends, a couple of new members. We did that, a lot of it through points. And so that's a way that maybe I've got 300 points and maybe you have 700. We can combine those and make a brand new member a Paul Harris Fellow. Or we can award somebody that's Rotarian of the Year in our club. So that's why the points recognitions are so important. It's kind of like a double goodie on your money because you still get credit for your next level of Paul Harris Fellow. And another thing that I think is very important is easy ways to contribute to the RI Foundation. As I mentioned, if you know your Rotary number, you can sign on, you can put it on your credit card, boom, it's done. Instead of having to mail a check, wait on it, etc. However, Rotary has Rotary Direct. And we have some members in our district that are Paul Harris Society members. What they do, about I think it's $84 a month taken out of their account. They never miss it because boom, it's gone. But all of a sudden they contribute $1,000 a year to our annual fund. So a lot of members are not familiar with that. That's an easy way to give to the foundation. Fourth, make sure that at least 2 members of our club have been certified by our district with the grant training. I think it would be a horror story to have one person certified, get past the deadline for district grants and say, well, you didn't get a second person certified. Boy, I'd be upset. But that's why, and our district does a great job in the training, and they do a great job getting the information out. So that's important. Okay, so I set the stage. What's next? Well, I want to tell you about 3 grants that our club has done to give you an example of what a small club can do. Now, in 2018, 2019, our club decided, we got a district grant. We were going to do an employment fair. Well, I thought, that's a big undertaking. You have to get businesses and corporations to participate and get the information out and everything. We jicky-jacked around, drug our feet, and went past that year, and we're coming up on, we have to use that grant money or send it back. Well, then COVID came along. So we went back to the district and said, we're not going to be able to do this employment fair. What do you think about a COVID grant? And Peter said, send it in. Let's take a look at it. Well, they immediately approved it. So what did we do with COVID? Well, let me tell you what we did. Meals for hospital nurses and first responders. Kind of thinking outside the box. At that time, we'd gotten in a situation where small businesses were struggling. No dining in, takeout, delivery only. So it's another double goodie, in my opinion. We supported small restaurants in our city. We provided meals to the night shift nurses that usually don't get anything. Everybody that contributes something usually takes it during the day. We took breakfast items to the police department. Didn't help get a ticket. But anyway, we helped. Our fire departments, we went and took breakfasts to them. And every club member participated in some way on deliveries and getting stuff ready. So we helped the merchants, we helped the first responders, and guess what? We got a lot of PR out of that, which we all want to get for our clubs. So that grant was $2,973, small club. Our project was, at that time, was $4,014, and we closed it in time, May 16th, 2020. The second one is 2019-2020 Rotary year. Our club applied for support for our nursing scholarships. And we've been doing this. This was our 12th year. This will be our 13th year this year. But anyway, the nursing scholarship, there's a shortage of nurses. Everybody's familiar. So that's what our project was in our community. And we had a scholarship awards dinner. We got sponsors to help us raising money for the club. So our district grant was $2,759, and total scholarships awarded. Now, I hope you guys are all sitting down. 20 grand. We gave away $20,000 to nursing students. And I've got to admit, 5,000 of that was a partner. The Schumann Foundation partnered with us. They gave the first place winner, we gave 5,000 and they gave 5,000. So the first place award winner got $10,000 for their education. What a project for a small club, 12 members. We closed that March 3, 2020. The last example I'd like to give you what our club has done is in 2020-2021 Rotary year. We applied for a district grant to support nursing scholarships. Due to the COVID, we had to do a virtual award ceremony program. We did not have a dinner. We could not have a dinner. Our district grant was $2,654. Our sponsors that we had in the community stayed with us and helped, and we gave away another $20,000 online. And again, we had a partner, the Schumann Foundation, top award, got $5,000. So these are some examples of what a small club can do. And I've had Rotarians from clubs say, well, how can we impact our community? I have 3 suggestions. 1, do a community assessment to find out needs. You need to find out what is needed. You know, we've talked about that on global grants. Don't go put a water well in when they've got a lake with pure water right next to it. You need to meet the needs of the community. Second, pick a project that your community would support, because you need support when you're doing a project in your community. So that's, I think, very important. And of course, last but not least, apply for a district grant to help support your project. And it gives you a base. You've got a district grant and you build from there. And it's amazing what clubs in our district are doing with district grants. And I could talk all day long on stuff that's been done, but I know you guys don't want to hear me talk all day long. I'm going to do a quote real quick. Those of you that remember past District Governor Reba Lovren, she said a past governor is like a pair of tennis shoes. The last thing to wear out is the tongue. I told Linda that, and I couldn't get her to quit laughing, but I think she can relate to that, and so can I. But thank you for allowing me to spend some time with you this morning. Love to talk about Rotary and what we do. And so with that, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Eric Thompson. And as Linda had said, he's Major Gifts Officer for the RI Foundation. So take it away, Eric.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for that excellent, detailed introduction. But I thought was particularly relevant was actually how the Rotary Foundation, which is your Rotary Foundation, actually distributes money back to your districts and clubs. So I'm going to go back to the sort of 36,000 foot view and do a pretty zippy overview and go into some more detail about what Linda asked me to talk about specifically, was how endowments work for you, for your clubs, for the districts, and for Rotary Foundation programs. So I'm going to share my screen. And if you'll see it, hopefully you can see all that. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, can everybody see that? Okay. So we have a 100-year history of being in the Rotary Foundation, and the Rotary Foundation, as you know, was founded by Arch Clump. So within that span of that past century, we've weathered wars, recessions. I mean, you know the history of the 20th century. It's been interesting, and it's still interesting, right? As of today. But one of the things the endowment does, and the fiscal models of Rotary have established, is stability and stable reserves. And that has kept us going throughout all these things. So that's been primarily done and driven through fairly conservative investment strategies, but they've worked, and they've preserved capital and grown capital in a steady way. So that's been one of the great hallmarks. The other hallmark is we've had 4-star ratings on Charity Navigator for 14 consecutive years. This will be our 14th year. We're still getting some of the reports in, but you can go online, and any Rotarian can go online, and incoming Rotarians or potential members that are really doing their due diligence in terms of looking at what they want to do charitably, they'll go and check out all our financials, and all of them are online. So that's one of our ratings that we get 100 points on.
Eric,
Traditionally. Yes?
just want to let you know your sharing is cut off. Could you try to? There.
Okay.
Got it. That did it.
Okay. So basically, just to back up, which all of you already know, sorry, I'm going to repeat some information that's going to be repeated, is obviously Rotary International is a 501c4. It's run by your board of directors. The revenue sources are dues, investment income, services, and other activities. And most of that is related to dues. So that, you know, Rotary Foundation is a 501c3, which technically means we run philanthropic programs. We have the legal authority to honor and recognize and manage your contributions. We manage the investment income, which is going to be endowment, and our expenses are actually running the programs, and the Rotarians are running through the programs through what you just heard: DDF funds, global grants, district grants, etc. And we administer the fund development side of the house. So this was just mentioned. I'll mention this again. Our goal last year was $410 million. We surpassed that by 10%, obviously by 40 million. It was a very successful year in terms of just overall fundraising. We've already known this. So this is the other point that I wanted to make that I don't know many people see. When we went into the COVID times and the pandemic times, we were very worried again about what's the impact going to be on the fiscal health of both Rotary International and the foundation. And this is actually, so they did a survey and did a deep dive into our archives. And I love this slide because it really illustrates that, yes, we've maxed and we're maybe at the peak of membership in terms of historical, but we're not declining as many people are very worried about. We are in the United States. However, if you look at the annual fund, which provides annual funding, as you know, you're very familiar with the annual fund. Yes, we've dipped in terms of post-recessions. There's always been post-recession dips or financial crises, and then it's rebounded very consistently. So I just hope that this is a reassuring slide for most of you that we are incredibly strong and growing, or at least steady. And that's true been for the past 100 years. So what does that mean in terms of actual endowment? You've already heard, this is just a quick illustration. One of the things that was mentioned is it used to be 50-50. So the trustees this year, in terms of annual fund share, looking through the lens, is it fair to all? So currently on the image on the left, that was the old model in terms of just sharing annual fund share contributions, and they split it. And I basically view this as sort of trimming the bush in terms of splitting those operating expenses fairly between the two organizations of World Fund and EDF. So, and the operating expenses are $5. So this was a policy change. I view it as a minor policy change, but I think you've heard enough about that in terms of the history. So taking a step back again, this is 1928, and Arch Klump established an endowment. And this was his original quote and his original address as past president of Rotary International in terms of establishing your Rotary Foundation. So this happened obviously a long time ago, and the Arch Klump Society is the highest level of recognition with legacy level gifts and other types of gifts of reaching a cumulative amount of $250,000 or more. So this really was the beginning of your Rotary Foundation. So what is the endowment? Most of you know endowments in terms of working either on other boards or through the Rotary. So basically we're in a campaign to build that endowment. And this has been a 6-year campaign. It's going to go to 2025. So the motto is 2025 by 2025. And the goal is to raise $2.025 billion in expectancies and net assets. So commitments, expectancies are people's gifts that obviously they make through their estate. And the vast majority of those go to endowment. The others have been current gifts that we've been receiving, plus accumulated investment income that gets pulled back into the endowment. So obviously this all supports Rotarians at work. So this is the other interesting thing. When Paul Harris died, this is actually one of the copy of the telegrams going to Rotary International to the Secretariat, illustrating the commitment that Paul Harris wanted to the foundation and the endowment in the foundation. So he, instead of asking for flowers, et cetera, during his death, he expressed that money might be sent to the foundation for furthering international understanding. So I really love those historical contexts because I was sort of trained as a historian, but I hope you get that, see that it's always been a commitment to the senior leaders and the leadership and the founders of Rotary. So one of the things you can do is go online, the Endowment Fund Financial Report. I'm going to skip over some of these a little bit quickly because it's a lot of detail, and you can always find this online. And like I said, the great benefit for all of you and all members is all of our financials are online. They can go 24/7, 365 days a week and look up what the most recent report has been. So, but we're specifically talking about endowment. And so this has been the market value and commitments growing through time from 2010 to currently. So you can see the net assets. The other slide was probably a little bit better graphic in the commitment, but this shows in terms of how long and what the commitments have been throughout time. I think a more important slide, well, you can see this as well, illustrating this section in terms of the specific types of tools and how we book them. You know, financial people love this type of things, but basically endowment net assets has grown from 338 million to about $460 million. And then you can see how we get to the total of $1.3 billion in terms of cumulative giving. So this is actually the detail. Happy to share this. I know you have the slides as well, but again, this is just pulled from our reports. But I did want to talk about what this means for individual donors. And one of the interesting things is named endowed funds are funds that can be established for a minimum gift of $25,000. Anybody can give to the endowment at any amount. You can give $100 to the endowment as an annual gift, but it goes to the pooled endowment. And you can give up, you can give up to $10 million if you want. We've had many of those. But so $25,000, a lot of people think giving to the endowment is like, well, I can't do that. That's for big donors, et cetera. But my point of view is like $25,000 is the price of a good used car these days, or piece of equipment, or anything that declines in value. I don't know how many of you have bought cars, but I'm on my 7th in my lifetime, and I can't remember one that's appreciated in value. And a couple of them cost $25,000. So if people sort of stumble and like, well, that's a lot of money. It's like, well, it's also the price of a car, and we can do those pledges over 3 years. But the more interesting thing is, how does this come back to support your clubs? Look at the total designation of new funds that were established in 2019 and 20 by spending designation. The vast majority, usually, I think the number is over 85% of all endowed funds that come to Rotary and donors established go to annual fund, or not annual fund share, but share. I always misspeak on that. So that means that if I give $100,000 and I establish an endowment, that income stream, half of it, again, as you just saw, are $47, or what the percentage is going to come back to your district as DDF. The other half goes to World Fund. So you get the best of both worlds. Global grants get supported, global initiatives and international initiatives get supported, and the money comes back to your district as well. So it's a win-win for both the clubs and the districts, the donors, and global grants. So just wanted you to see that. The other areas are areas of focus. Many directed gifts go there: World Fund, Peace Centers, and global grants. But again, Share program covers some of those global grants. So this is the other issue that I just brought up. We were talking about the car metaphor. And so essentially, if you gave $25,000 in 1996, that cumulative spending in terms of the interest that's kicked off from that named endowed fund to date has been about $35,000. The market value that's retained in terms of the principal has grown to $32,000. So again, that sort of reflects both a conservative fiscal policy in terms of retaining principal, but also keeping that because it actually is the fuel that supports all the Rotarian grants and programs. So one of the things when we're talking with individual donors and you're sharing with individual donors is the naming opportunities that we talked about. So this really focuses in, and again, Linda, Tom is an expert, many of you are experts in this area, but what I do, obviously, and some of you do, and Tom does, and we all do, and our neighbors and our members, is they come to you potentially with questions. So many of those, the strength of the endowment and the strength of the Rotary Foundation is it's large enough and strong enough fiscally and professionally managed by professional staff members. So what we do and what we can promise to donors is that if you are giving larger amounts of money, that it's going to be well managed. And so many of these things apply. And also there are many different choices and layers of choice in terms of what a donor might want to support. So you can do customized global grants in terms of an endowed fund. You can do an activity global grant endowed fund. And the basic level is a named endowed fund at $25,000. And again, the vast majority of those go to share program. And the more money people want to donate, they might have multiple interests and have done many things in Rotary and say, well, I want to do a global grant for Guatemala and establish an endowment that's going to be country led and an activity focused on WASH projects. So we can do that. And again, this is just the documentation that you share with them. And many of you might have seen it. And if you haven't, these documents are all available online. So again, to step back, our areas of focus, which you are all very familiar with, because most of you are very engaged in grants and community. But again, we have a new one, which is environment this year. And I know, of course, there's a lot of politics around the world, word environment. But I take a step back with that and say, you know, water and sanitation projects are environmentally oriented, because if there's been a drought or there's been an environmental impact, a hurricane or whatever, which we've learned in the Bahamas and everywhere else, in the fires in California, people need drinking water. Many of you have done WASH projects. So sometimes that grant that fell into water, sanitation, and hygiene now might fall within environment. And that's the way I look at it, to sort of see what's the opportunities for using that new area of focus will be, that might be very attractive to a lot of donors. So again, one of the things that I want to emphasize is, you know, Tom and I and all of you are donors, and we have these very personal conversations with many of our friends, family, and Rotarians, and they come to you with many questions. Sometimes they want those to be very confidential. I work with a donor that gives a significant annual gift, and he wants to be completely anonymous. And so what we have done internally is be able to set up our system so he avoids recognition throughout the Rotary system, but that's what he wants, and he's a very significant donor. So what I do is have those donor-centric conversations, and what we all do, and what I really try to do is listen to the donor and try and match their overall experience with what the tools are that might best serve them, and also maintain their confidentiality if that's their desire. We sponsor, you know, events and projects. We work with you as obviously doing these types of presentations, and work one-on-one with individual donors. And that's true. A lot of people think the endowment is basically, that's something also that I'll do through my estate or through a bequest, et cetera. So we also do that as well through planned giving. So one of the opportunities in terms of endowed fund is having personalized endowment fund reports come to you. This is a sample of that tells you when your money was donated, what the gift value is, and what the fund purpose is, and where the impact has been, and what the management of it's been. So that's a very nice sort of what we call a stewardship piece, but it really keeps people up to date in terms of how their endowment is performed. So this is your Rotary Legacy Commitment Notification Card. Again, this is on the planned giving side if you're making a bequest or have made a bequest. And many donors fill this out after having those conversations with the gift officer or a foundation chair or EMJ Tom, et cetera, to designate some of the things to explore their interests and how they want to do their gift. So I know I'm running out of time. That's why I'm speaking fast. I'm going to skip over this a little bit because it might not be as relevant to many donors. But one thing that is very important is, you know, with pandemic, Congress changed how people can access money to donate more money charitably. And one of the things that they did is you can always continue to donate through your IRAs. And some of you are donating through your IRAs, through your minimum required distribution. And you can still, you know, deduct 100% of that. That directly has to go from your administrator to the Rotary Foundation, but that's a detail that we can work out if you're interested in doing that. One of the most interesting things, though, is actually 100% of your adjusted gross income. And this is not having to do with your IRA, but just your basic income. You know, if you itemize your gifts and taxes, that you might be able to donate up to 100% of your adjusted gross income. And so what that means is up to $175,000 potentially, if you're giving at that level, and there's some people that give it that, but anything below that level, some people don't want to pay any income taxes, and this is a way to do it through charitable contributions. And this is unique to this year, and this will end in December. So, whoops. So that's a unique, we can go into more details, but again, that's usually a unique opportunity for those specific individuals that have a lot of income and don't need it. That's not me. So basically with the Arch Clump Society, again, is Rotary's tomorrow, depends on what we do today. And that literally is what the endowment is meant to do. It's meant to establish the fuel for funding all the future projects of Rotarians into the future. So I wanted to say thank you very much. I know we'll have time for questions later. I know this was an outpouring of information, but the real issue is, again, you all are very experienced. You've done a great deal of work and great jobs. And I know Tom Walker, given his experience and now his role as the EMJ, but also as grants officers, there's a lot of deep knowledge in your district and experience. So anything I can do to help and support you is my pleasure. And I'm looking forward to getting out and visiting you all, hopefully in the new year. So I'm pitching it over right now. It's going, is that going to you, Jesse, or?
I'll let Linda unmute.
Oh, Tom, it's going to Tom Lindsay.
I am so sorry. Tom Lindsay. Tom, you have to unmute.
I do it. Can you hear me?
You
Yes,
did
we
it.
can, Tom.
Yes.
Okay, good. Number one, thank you, Eric, for all your great information. We have a lot of information today. First thing to understand is that we're not trying to take from the annual fund for the endowment. We need both to function in a positive way in our district. Our annual fund giving in our district has always been most generous, and we've been very fortunate in endowments. Again, Eric mentioned whatever you want to give, $100, whatever. One way to give $100 or $50, you can do it if someone a memorial to someone, rather than when you donate to a charity, you can donate through Rotary, designate the endowment fund, and it goes to endowment, and the person gets a nice letter from Rotary, as they do in all memorials. Why do people want to give? Jesse, do you have my overlay? Sometimes you don't think about these. Rotary can work with you to get solutions to some of these concerns you have. They'll work with you and your financial advisors, your accountants, estate planners, to help meet some of these goals you may have, such as paying for your children's college education, tax issues, healthcare expenses, wanting to provide for their children and other heirs, wishing to pass on charitable values to children and future generations. Rotary can work with your issues and help you get solutions for some of your concerns. You don't think about these at times. And your motivation to give, that list would be endless. Everything from a civic cause to special things in your life. So this is not an exclusive list. Some of these things you don't think about, but Rotary can work with you and your advisors to help you meet some of these goals. The next thing is which Eric had put up, is where can your gifts go? The World Fund he mentioned, which is for everything from global grants to different issues and projects in Rotary. The share, which we hardly recommend because it does give us money back for our district designated funds, which, as you see, goes, as Rick mentioned, goes to our local grants as well as our global grants. Just general support in the endowment and Rotary Peace Centers. That's just a few things. As I mentioned, when you give larger amounts, you can have more control over designating where the funds do go. And I'm going through this pretty quickly on purpose because you have a long time to sit. The next item is, what kind of gifts can you give to Rotary? Well, number one, cash, which I think everybody likes, but you can give securities, real estate. You can endow gifts through a will or a trust, life insurance, retirement plans. Any way you can think of to give to Rotary, Rotary will work with you, your financial advisors, accountants, to help you meet your goal of donating to the endowment. The endowment is very important because it ensures long-term future, as any endowment does. Your gift will last forever, or as long as Rotary does. We hope that's forever. And so it's a way of giving a little more to help ensure a legacy passes on, that you know that you're helping Rotary in a long-term basis. Again, that's not to ignore the annual fund, but if you have an extra few bucks, and again, I talked to Eric about this, sometimes we talk about it in big numbers, as he mentioned, $100 too. Everything counts. And so no gift is really too small to help Rotary. And we encourage your participation. We appreciate all your participation in the district over the years. Our district has been the forefront of many foundation projects in the annual fund. So we continue to lead. We have a great leader in Linda to help us go forward, and Tom Walker. And I'm not taking up all the time because I know that everybody's tired of sitting. So I encourage you to contact us in the future. Our committee, when I get everybody together, will be trying to figure out a legitimate way to contact each Rotarian in the district, either by mail, email, or text, or some way to get our messages across to you. We're thinking about December, but it may be January, because November and December are very busy months for Rotarians and their families. And so we may, after the first of the year, try to make some more personal contacts. And so I hope that, are you going to, Jez, there's a question, are you going to get copies of these slides? Jesse's recording this, so one way or another, we can get you copies. So I thank you. And next, I'd like to introduce Lucinda General, Zone Membership Coordinator for Zone 26, and she's a PDG. So Lucinda, take it away.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that introduction, Tom. And I have to tell you, I'm impressed with what I'm hearing. This is we're off and running, but let's pick up on what you said about the fact that we're sitting. I think we should all see everybody's belt buckle. So why doesn't everybody stand up for a second? Okay. And just do it. Just do it. I'm sorry. I'm showing you that I'm wearing sweatpants. There we go. Okay. All right. So maybe that'll refresh your brain cells with a little supply of oxygen. But indeed, I am a past governor from out of Arizona. At the time, it was District 5510. I'm a proud member of the Rotary Club of Mesa West Rotary, and we will tell you that we are the ace of clubs. And I hope everybody feels just as proud and egotistical about their own Rotary Club as I do. That's what you want. You want to be proud of what you belong to. And going back to Linda's confusion, the whoop-de-doo title is Rotary Coordinator. And I think somebody at Rotary wanted to play a joke. Every other title is very descriptive and easily defined. We are the mystery soup bucket where everything else ends up. Rotary coordinators are generalists. We are here to help clubs with any phase of development. It could be committee structure, it could be bylaws, it could be how you emphasize youth programs. And the big majority of our time, we're spending times on all things membership. So the shorthand is membership coordinator, but believe it or not, we're supposed to be doing more than that. So I have a couple questions. And when I was looking at the participants list, some of you were kind enough to label yourself as a club president or a president-elect. But my fellow past governors, I would really like to talk to those folks who are here attending on behalf of their club or for their own enrichment in Rotary. So I wrote down a few names. So if I get desperate for someone to give an answer, I'll warn you, I'm going to call on some folks directly. So who among the non-PDG group could tell me if they've heard of a thing this year called Each One Bring One? Do I have a volunteer to do that? Just unmute yourself and answer me.
This is Donna Padachi, and yes, I have.
What do you think it means?
It means we all share the responsibility of increasing the membership.
Pretty darn easy, right? She's right. That's it. But in my business as usual, I'm finding that many people just think, well, yes, I understand it, but that's not for me. I'm not really into approaching people actively and seeking to grow my own club or refer people to another club. So let me ask another knowledge question. Can anyone tell me what the essential elements of Rotary are? And again, you can unmute yourself and just shout it out. If not, I'm going to call on a plant. One of them is membership. Anybody want to take a stab at what the other two essential elements are? Okay, Kevin, let him have it. You should be there, Kevin Padilla.
Yeah, I'm here. Foundation.
That's one more. What's the third one?
Branding.
Ha, there it is. Right. You got it. Woohoo. That's it. It's not hard. So what makes us tick is the synergy between membership, foundation, and public image. And that's the point of today's conversation. We know that the larger numerically that we get in members, we have the potential to increase our donations. If we increase donations, both from our rank and file members and from those people soliciting the general public or doing something that is a fundraiser, that funds our service projects. That grows the strength of our Rotary Foundation. So more members equals more money equals more service. So it's very important for the way these things support each other. Now, here's another one, a current sort of new thing in Rotary. Has anybody heard of a cause-based Rotary Club? And if you have, tell me what it was that you heard about it. Big blank, no one's heard of a cause-based Rotary Club.
I understand that it deals with a specific issue that is important to those members.
Okay, have you heard of a downright real one? Do you have an example, or perhaps you haven't run into one yet?
I haven't run into one, I've just read about it.
Okay, well, I'm going to assume the slides are showing as they should.
Yeah.
Here's a smattering of logos. Now, I'm going to tie this back to public image in a very simple way. So right in our own zone, which zone 26 is paired with zone 27, and we are the whole western half of the United States. It's a very large area. Minnesota is up north, and they started a club specifically based with veterans. Those folks have a common perspective. They can offer mutual support to each other outside of Rotary. Human trafficking, there's multiple of these around the world. This is the logo that I ran into. There's a lot of environmental clubs. Rotary Club of Puget Sound is highlighted here. The blue one was unusual. It isn't a great logo, but I thought it was a very interesting cause. Restoration Rotary is cause-based virtual club that aims to address not only addiction and mental health needs, but the contributing source to these epidemics facing humanity. That was news to me. But here's the interesting thing about public image. I know that right here in Arizona, we recently chartered down in the Tucson area an environmental caused club. And I went, oh, let me promote Arizona. Let me put their logo up. I couldn't find anything anywhere. That's sad. Yes, I'm putting them a little bit under the bus. The name of the club is the Rotary Club of Tucson Verde. But this is, in my opinion, another example of you got to think about what you're doing when you're doing it. If I told you that my Mesa West Club was centered on maternal and child health, you wouldn't have any clue from the name Mesa West. It's just a nice name. So as you can see by the examples on the slide, a good descriptive name of a cause-based club is helpful. I wish Tucson Verde a lot of luck, and I'm going to make sure that we get them some public image backup to help them get a presence on the internet. So it is interdependent, even though I'm the membership guy, we got to worry about all parts of it. But let's talk about what our role is and how do we leverage membership towards new club members. A minute ago, I got silly and I had you stand up, but if you see this motion here that I'm doing with my hands, we're going to do that together for a specific reason. We're going to dive deep into your imagination. And Donna Mellinger, I'm probably going to call on you first. So I'm forewarning you, and I'm not trying to be rude to you. First thing I want everybody to do, including Linda, is I want you to get rid of every thought you've ever had about how difficult it is to bring in a new member or how much you dislike the idea of it. So what we're going to do is close our eyes. We're going to breathe in and let out all the old. That's it. One more time. Raise your hands up. Exhale all that old stuff and come around to the beginning. Ah, boy, do I feel better. So Donna, will you talk to me?
Sure.
Okay. Can you think of anybody that you come into daily or weekly or monthly contact with that might just have a mind for serving in their community? And just tell us who they might be.
Yes, in fact, there is a woman in Arroyo Seco, a little tiny municipality in Taos, and she just started a business, and it's a dress shop, you could say. And I've introduced myself, and I've gotten her email, and I think she would love to be part of our group. I just do. I have a feeling.
Do you think it's really hard to make that transition from a conversation into an ask, or at least moderately hard, or is it easy for you?
It would be easy for me because I just believe in Rotary. I know what it's done for me. So it's very easy to speak to that.
What would happen if you asked her what she thought the most important community needs were? Just, we haven't gotten to going to a meeting yet. Just if you put that in your conversation, what might she say? And remember, use your imagination. You can make it up here.
Education in New Mexico.
Okay.
That could matter to her.
That would be cool.
What else she may care about is mental health issues.
Okay. Two perfect examples. Now, if we somehow or another glean information like that from an associate that we have, it could be the guy at the dry cleaning counter, it could be the person who is giving you an estimate for remodeling on your house. From that, if you read your district newsletter, if you've watched what's going on, there might be a service project, and you can say, hey, by the way, we're forming this study committee about doing these little libraries in our community, that this would support literacy. And if you draw someone to a service project and they meet one or two or three of the other people in your club, what do you know? It lights a little fire. And then the segue to saying, by the way, we do breakfast on Fridays. Why don't you come along? Thank you, Donna, for your help.
Oh, sure. Thank you.
So there's people of all shapes and sizes that have different things in the back of their mind. We've watched how brave Donna was in giving me an example of someone that she's, in fact, approached a little bit. Is there one more person here who would give me an example of someone you can think of, either that you've approached or that you know you should and you just haven't bothered to yet? And we'll just unmute yourself and we'll hear from another person. There's got to be another brave person. I'm wondering if it's Mayella or Bob Barnard or Dean Caldwell. Anybody? Donna, you're the bravest person in 5520.
I have another one.
Oh, you do? Well, then let's go for it.
And we're thinking about someone to approach to be in Rotary. Is that what you're asked?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, everywhere you go, when you're doing a project, you always bump into people, and you know, it's just very easy to talk about how little they have to do to make a huge difference, because everyone is going to tell you they don't have enough time.
Good point.
And it just doesn't have to be tons of time to make a real difference, whether it's in your community or whether you have global interest. So that there's another person that has brought up that time restraint. So,
Well, thank you for that second example. But let's think about what we know from our business world. We know that in sales, when you're making an approach to a new customer, you need to listen. You need to know what they're looking for, what makes them interested in your product. So rather than walking in saying, okay, I have to recite this litany of things about what we do and how we do it and what the project was last year and how much money we raised, you can, if you make it about them, if they're telling you that they are devastated by the wildfires in the next county over, if they're really concerned with, and global warming, pick a topic, any topic, show them that Rotary, through our areas of focus and the local projects and international projects that we do, there's a tie. Suzanne, do you have a comment?
I do. As you're talking and as Donna was talking, I know someone who's very involved in an organization called Many Mothers, and it's about providing care for new mothers and caretakers for new babies and equity around all of that, financially. And you've opened my mind to having a conversation with her because of the emphasis in Rotary on maternal health and that area of focus. I think it's an easy conversation, just like you're saying. So it's just something that came to mind while you were talking that I wanted to share.
Well, I will put the group out of synchronization here if I don't wind to the end, but let me give you a couple thoughts of how these pieces come together. But I appreciate the participation. Donna, you knocked the cover off the ball, and thank you, Suzanne. So here's the thing, we can now perhaps think a little bit differently about approaching people and have a little better success in bringing people in. One of the key facets of keeping your club and your district healthy is not just getting them in the door, but keeping them there. And people want to stay if their needs are being met. So when people have an interest in something new, you want to give them the power to run with the ball, to actually achieve it. But the first thing they're going to do is they're going to look for money. And if you're about to put in that next district grant application, maybe you can base it on the project that was introduced by a new member. One year, my club had 5 new members, and we had them each make a proposal. And we ended up choosing one of those proposals to put forth to our district. So there's lots of ways of giving people ownership. And when they feel connected, they don't want to leave. So we heard Eric earlier say that when people are checking us out, they do things like look at Charity Navigator. They darn sure do, and we can be proud of it. People that want to feel the magnitude outside of our community, they want to hear the polio stories that I'm sure Bob will tell us coming up in a minute. They may have never realized that we're sending peace scholars around the world. They may not know that we do not just local community grants, but big, fat, wonderful global grants. So it's amazing what you can do, how you can make a member feel engaged. But to do that, again, it goes back to the horsepower. And let's see if I can talk and click at the same time. Here it is. what I'm hoping you're going to do, and I think Eric's going to like me better after this. There it is. If you will download the Rotary Direct form, better yet, if you read on the form, it also tells you how to log into My Rotary, and you can do it online. Please encourage those new members right from day one to sign up for Rotary Direct. Get that money flowing. If they're mad about polio and love that idea of getting behind it, they can direct their money there. The annual fund is the all-time winner 100% of the time. That works. And when you really need more help, your district is entirely prepared to give the people and the expertise. And you'll find all of their names, including the names of those of us at the zone level who help beyond just your district, included in my second attachment. I made a contact sheet for you. So I hope that I've tilted your perspective. Please be ready to approach people, give them what they want, show them where they can find it in Rotary, and they in turn will become our newest wave of supporters to the Rotary Foundation. Thank you very much for giving me time today.
Thank you, Lucinda. We appreciate it. Now, believe it or not, I did put in a break here, people, because I knew coffee had been flowing. We've got a break. I want you to go enjoy the morning air for just a few minutes. Just breathe, get a refresher for your cup, pat the dog, stretch, pat your husband or your wife, whatever feels good, go do it. See you back here, say in 15 minutes. Does that give you enough time? Okay, go do it. Have fun.
Here we go.
Lou, that was outstanding.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Thank
Well,
you. Everybody has been. I am just,
I'm impressed.
I think I'm going good. It's going good. How does everybody else like it?
I wanted
Hello?
to thank you all for, again, letting me participate and inviting me. But I also wanted to emphasize something Lucinda said, that maybe we can communicate to all the members. Is one of the, I have an interesting story where I'm working with a former DRFC, and she's now the club foundation chair in her club, and she's been president. You know, she's a lot like you. She's done a lot of different roles. And she's been reaching out to me to get club members up to the next level, or actually she's been fielding like half of her membership for some reason is coming and talking to her about what do I do to get to major donor level 1 or major donor level 2, et cetera. And in our conversations, I'm like, well, sometimes we can't share that type of information. We can with the DRFCs and the DGs, as you know, but we did that. And she was the former DRFC. But long story short, she didn't know how to go through My Rotary, or many of her club members didn't know to go through My Rotary because they didn't have My Rotary accounts. And so I was like, you know, you can do this with them and say, go get your own donor history report. And the members were like, what's a donor history report? So they can go check their own information. But my story is not just increasing donations, but to Lucinda's point is there's so many resources as a member opening to My Rotary, and a huge, I don't know what the numbers is. We might have to check membership, but a ton of members don't even access Rotary through their My Rotary accounts because they haven't set them up. And sometimes a training session in those clubs is great because then they have access.
If I may, our district 5495 last Rotary year put a push on. There was a contest of percentage of increase of members signing up for Rotary Direct. And
I love that idea.
And in my own club, the way we handled it is, I'm not the Rotary Foundation chair, but I was a bunch of years ago. I pulled from my access a club recognition summary, just so I didn't want really the numbers. I wanted all the member numbers, which you can get a lot of different ways. And I was at a meeting with my laptop hooked up in the back of the room. Chuck Flint, the chair, was talking about it. And he says, if you don't know how to go get in, just go see Lucinda in the back. And I went through with 6, 8, 10 people, a couple different times. They wrote down their username, they wrote down their password, they knew what to do. And our club had the greatest percentage of increase. So it's not hard, but you have to concentrate on it. But
Well-
some of them just wanted to do the darn form and be done with it. And it's like, fine, do it,
But Rotary Direct, I mean, that's something people don't think about because they don't know that next step. Plus, they don't always know their number.
It's right there.
That surprises me. And actually, it surprises me that they don't know it's on the magazine.
Well, but you can also take just a linear list, name and TRF number. You can pass that around. What's someone going to do with it? Donate to your number? No,
That's hard.
it's called, here it is, write it down,
Here, do it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's a good idea.
They don't need the rest of the stuff, just John Smith and a number.
Yeah. Now that's, you just opened my thought bank.
See, it was the deep breaths that did it.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, yes.
Kevin, you're gonna do that, aren't you?
You're gonna donate to my number? Oh, I like that idea. Thank you. No, this is going well.
If I might interject, this is Donna again. I'm not sure what the new committee is going to do, but we used to take the listing, the committee used to take the listing of everyone's contributions and individually send them to the members because, as has been mentioned, almost none of our members know how much they have donated. And that was remarkably effective in encouraging people to sort of up it and make that next Paul Harris or whatever. But we just broke it down and wrote them individual notes and gave them that information and also told them how to get it themselves in the future. But that was always very effective.
Yep.
Did that come out of the district foundation or your club?
It was from Rotary International, but dealing with our club alone. But we had a small committee dealing with it, and we would break down those members and just send them a note. And it encouraged many of them to up their contributions to get that next Paul Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're just talking about getting it off the foundation report that the secretaries can get, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah.
And Rick Akins mentioned something like that he does. I think he writes it in a letter or something, but that's a great way.
Yeah, it's the same thing that Rick does, Rick and his club. And I encourage other clubs to do it because it's such a simple thing, but most members we found do not know. We try to get them to check, but they often do not.
That's a good idea.
So Lucinda, I've got a question for you.
Keep it easy.
You were commenting on the purpose-directed clubs. I forget the exact term.
Cause-based, yes.
Cause-based. It seems like that's kind of an opportunity for virtual clubs that might be broader in area than just a city. Is that the case, or are they all typically a local club?
All of the above.
All of the above.
I mean, here in Arizona, we've got our governor-elect is a retired Phoenix police officer, and he is starting a cause-based club for first responders. So that absolutely will be a Terra club, in-person meeting. I don't know what their pattern's going to be because it's yet to be formed, but he's intending that as a local thing. Now, will he go hybrid and have a Zoom feature so that it could attract others? Again, I don't know. But in my example slide, for sure, that group that was forming surrounding mental health issues, they said straight out, it's a virtual club. So it could be adaptable to whatever your vision was.
But actually, your example of first responders, that's a good example where you know how big your pool of potential members is.
But if you think of pardon me, the buzzwords of society now. We have a lot of people that are very concerned with education. We've got people concerned with supporting and absorbing immigrant populations. How do you offer support services? You could pick any kind of a hotspot and create something around it. My personal concern is that the club is formed too laser focused, too narrow, and doesn't go beyond the scope of that one subject. See, peace officers to me sounds broader. I would be, human trafficking, absolutely huge, horrible issue. But I would hope they would also talk about, I don't know, maybe dropout rate in the high school, because that's like leads to it, but you don't want to get too narrow.
I have a question. Earlier you were talking about branding, and then you were talking about time and donations and things like that. I heard someone refer to the Rotary Club as Kiwanis for the wealthy. How do you give credit to people who have time but may not have treasure, and they donate that time, such as literacy, such as donating books, such as, shouldn't they be given credit for the time that they've given, or some of the other things that they have given that may not be an exact dollar amount?
Certainly, and part of that is the ingenuity of your leaders. But if you remember Rotary Club Central as a club, you set some goals, you say this is what we're going to do, and then in theory, you're tracking your hours. So if you have 3 members that just spent 15 hours a week for the last 6 weeks organizing your Alzheimer's walk, that is an achievable goal. It's a cumulative running count throughout the year. And if a governor-elect in their upcoming plans said, I'm going to recognize clubs on the basis of reported service hours, now you have the opportunity to drill down into that. And but hey, if you're the club president, the 2 things you have fully in your control is you can ring that bell as much as you want, and you can honor people for whatever you see fit. And if they need a horsepower award for all of their hard work and dedication, then do it. Another great way to use club foundation points, make them a Paul Harris Fellow.
Yeah, also you can quantify that. The IRS actually puts a dollar amount to volunteer hours.
That's right.
Something like $27.50, I think. And you can actually quantify the value of their contribution, at least according to the IRS.
The other side effect, big selling point in my book about Rotary Direct, you're not flowing money through a Rotary Club. It's going straight to the foundation. It's documented. It's 100% deductible. There's no doubt about it. When it sits in the club treasury and then the club treasurer forwards a check later on in the year, technically that's a broken line. So get it out of the club, and your reported earnings throughout the year will look much more gradual than nothing and then a big pile in June.
Plus the secretary and treasurer don't have to process it.
That's right.
Well, and that's an interesting point that I just want to reiterate, is like almost all clubs are 501c4s.
Right.
So that there are very different and technical rules about what is a contribution as what, and that's why, as you know, many clubs and some districts establish their own foundations for 501c3s to process charitable gifts.
Right.
Because, and again, one of the things that we can't do, and it's between the donor and the IRS, is how they tally their contributions and their volunteer hours, et cetera. And one thing that none of us really should be doing is providing any type of what can be construed as technical advice or any type of advice when it comes to tax advice, unless you're in a client relationship, professional client relationship with that donor. And we always defer to those people. Everybody has different situations. They they have different incomes, they have different assets, and they might be doing a different strategy that's motivated by tax savings. But quite frankly, most of the donors that I work with aren't motivated by tax purposes. So, but I don't even discuss it. None of us professionally and ethically can do that on the staff level.
Is it a violation to point out that if you donate directly, there's no issue with your donation, or is that considered advice?
No, advice is almost like it's related professionally to tax advice and scenarios where if you donate this amount, you're going to get this tax benefit, et cetera, et cetera. So, or, you know, that's basically the bottom line of it. But it's important in terms of where people donate legally, because I mean, as you know, clubs donate all the time to other 501c3s directly, and they pool, you know, members' contributions to support, you know, the food banks and the relief efforts, et cetera. But again, the Rotary Foundation on this side of the house doesn't have anything to do with that. And that's really between the donor of how they document that. And sometimes there's some frustrations there with members that's like, well, I didn't receive any documentation from my club. And it's like, well, they can write a letter, but there's some that's where we've had some challenges in the past.
It gets
Rick, if I could, I sort of been eavesdropping on your conversation here. The Rotary Direct, does it have a mechanism for automatic monthly debits from your bank account?
Oh yeah, that's what it is.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Well, and it doesn't have to be monthly. You can set it up any way you want.
Periodic.
Yeah, quarterly,
semi-annually, or once a year.
Absolutely right.
You can even edit it halfway. The way I became a major donor was doing $250 a quarter, but every once in a while I would go in and kick one of those 250s over to Polio. So.
And that's the nice thing. It's convenient. It's self-managed. You can be as passive as you want in terms of automatic withdrawals, or you can do exactly what Lucinda did, which is nice, and saying, you know, I've got a little more here, or I'm going to shift my gift this quarter to Polio or Endowment or whatever it might be. But it's still, you still accumulate your recognition points because it's all based on cash contributions. So that's a very straightforward linkage between cash giving and cumulative points.
Since we have so many questions regarding that issue, what I think I'm going to do is I will get with my people that I'm under on this issue, and I will put out some information for the district on that so that you guys have that in writing, okay? Because I think it is important that you have that, okay?
And Linda,
all right.
Real quick, you can also use your annual giving officer, staff member, Jeff Cochran, who's
right.
So any resources you need that way that you don't have to go dig for them, he can certainly help you out there. He's the annual giving officer for Rotary Foundation for your district.
Right. Yes, I call him a lot.
I know.
He's my buddy.
There you go. Good resource. Just wanted a good reminder.
Yes. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah. Jeff would have been with us today, but he's going to
Tucson,
Arizona. Everybody's going to Arizona. Okay. I think we need to go ahead and get started. Do you have everybody muted, Jesse? Are you ready?
Not yet.
Yeah.
I think pretty close.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Okay, here we go. Bob Rogers is up next. Good morning, Bob. Got your shirt changed?
Bob, you are muted.
I do have my shirt changed, yeah.
I
You
have
guys-
to do.
You
All
caught
right,
me
Bob.
with the time change. Sorry.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Okay, Bob, we had already introduced you. Bob is with the Zone in Polio Now coordinator, Zone 27. So Bob, take it away.
Thanks, Linda. And good morning, Rotarians, and thanks for inviting me to your foundation seminar. So poliomyelitis. the virus that afflicts mostly children, attacking the motor neurons that control the muscles in the body. So say that the child's leg muscles are attacked, he can't walk. If the diaphragm muscles are attacked, then they can't breathe on their own without the assistance of a machine like an iron lung or a modern day ventilator. And if there's no access to a machine like that due to poor health infrastructure, like in developing countries, then the child dies. Now, you've all heard about the iron lung and how it's saved thousands of children's lives here in the US and in other first world countries. But imagine if you had to live in one. District 5950 Polio Plus Chair Tim Mulcrone in Minnesota describes his brief experience just being in it for a short period of time. Watch.
I'm in this lung, iron lung. I just climbed into it just to get a sense of.
It suddenly occurred to me, am I not sharing the screen?
You're
No,
not.
you're not.
Okay. Let me go back. I apologize for that.
And remind us why it was that all of a sudden Lori calls. Because she's mad.
Okay, is that a little bit better? Okay, sorry about that. Here we go.
Hi, I'm in this lung, iron lung. I just climbed into it just to get a sense of what it must have been like for thousands and thousands of children who had to be put in here. And I'm telling you, it's abject horror to be inside of this. This is the machine that mechanically inflated their lungs, which had been paralyzed by polio. You know, in September of 2021, right now, there are only 2 new cases of polio in the entire world. Now that might not seem like much to you. You have to put that into some context. See, you have to go back to the 1940s and 50s when the fear of polio gripped people so much that if they heard of a polio case in their neighborhood, they sent their children away if they had the means to do so, to be hopefully safe from the polio virus. Theaters were closed, except for church, nobody really got together, not for birthday parties. Swimming pools were closed and the such. Well then 2 doctors, Dr. Salk and Dr. Sabin, developed 2 cheap and effective vaccines in the mid-1950s. And that changed everything. So now 2 cheap and effective vaccines could be distributed around the world. Well, the world had 30 plus years. Let's take you to 1985. One would think that after 30 years of 2 cheap and effective vaccines, the world would be rid of polio. But in fact, there were 387,000 cases of polio in 125 countries around the world, and the World Health Organization said that was endemic, common, normally occurring and expected in a given population. It was Rotary International that said that's just a geopolitical, logistical problem to be solved. So let's jump forward now to today, a little more than 30 years later. Now, isn't it impressive that we're down to 2 cases in 2 countries in the entire world? We are this close to eradicating polio. And I have to tell you, when our tarnished Rotary pins are found by our great-great-grandchildren, what will they be told? that that pin represents. I want it to be synonymous with an end to the dreaded disease of polio. And our children's children's children will say, wow, or whatever it is that they say that means wow. Godspeed our goal of a polio-free world. Thank you very much.
Imagine listening to the mechanical sounds of that machine 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life. Abject horror is what I believe Tim called it. As you all know, we made tremendous progress since we started this battle in 1988, back when there were 350,000 children a year, almost 1,000 a day contracting wild polio in those 125 countries that Tim mentioned. Pakistan and Afghanistan is now where we are now. Only 2 countries, quite an accomplishment. As you know, there were 3 types of wild polio virus, labeled types 1, 2, and 3. And I say were because type 2 was declared eradicated in 2015 and type 3 was declared eradicated in 2019. So that leaves us with only 1 wild type 1 polio out there in the environment. This chart here shows the tremendous progress we've made since 2013. Look at how dramatic the numbers are. They're dropping all the way down to 22, a slight uptick in 2018, and then bang, 2019, we have a huge increase to 176. And last year we ended up a few numbers down from that, 140. But what happened to cause the increase in the numbers those last 2 years? How did it happen? Well, some of it was due to lack of access to certain areas because of the conflict going on. And although the governments of Pakistan and Afghanistan were supporting us, there were still radical political and religious factions out there who are opposed to vaccinations. Some of them thinking us Westerners were trying to sterilize their children with these drops. And then in March 2019, 2 polio workers and their security guards are gunned down while they're doing their work in Pakistan. And then the following month, a fake video appears on social media in Pakistan, claiming that the children are being vaccinated with expired vaccines. And it shows these children writhing in pain in this video as a result of that. And then all of a sudden, one of the children stops writhing, looks up at the camera, smiles, and waves. Clearly staged. But nevertheless, the video did its job, and with a narrative urging parents to take their children to the local hospitals and clinics, they became overwhelmed and the whole NID had to be suspended for a period of time. And a health clinic was even burned down to the ground during the chaos that day. But the end result was temporary suspension of the vaccinations and an estimated 2 million children not being vaccinated. Now, meanwhile, in Taliban, in Afghanistan, the Taliban were forbidding any house-to-house vaccinations because they feared that the vaccinators were passing on intelligence to U.S. forces for drone strikes on Taliban leaders. Now, this is particularly since the U.S. used a fake vaccination campaign back in 2011 to unearth the hideout of Osama bin Laden. And then in March of last year, we were forced to suspend immunization activities altogether because of COVID-19. Now, you know, we've hit huge roadblocks before, haven't we? And while they are demoralizing, we've reacted accordingly and overcome those obstacles. And let there be no doubt we will again. But like the roadblock that both Rotarians and health professionals alike thought would be the hardest to overcome, the elimination of the wild polio virus in India, with its 1.3 billion population, many living in slums in close quarters with each other. But we did it with the last case occurring in January 2011. And then the next largest hurdle was the African continent. And after years of exhaustive work and persistence in the 47 countries that make up that region, we were within 2 weeks of the required 3 years without a single case in order to declare Africa free of polio when 4 cases emerged in Nigeria. Boy, talk about demoralizing. But we reacted with a strategic massive vaccination campaign. And as a result, there have been no new cases since then. And on August 25th of last year, the World Health Organization officially certified the African region free of the wild polio virus. Yes. And now we have one more summit to reach, and some folks think the most difficult one due to the political and religious strife, as well as geographic challenges, and that's the combined countries of Afghanistan and Pakistan before we can declare the world free of the wild polio virus. And now back to where we left off, to help us understand what happened with that increase during the 19 and 20 years. Here's a chart that shows the total cases on a month-by-month basis. Notice the uptick in cases where my mouse is in April, the month after the killing of the polio workers, and then the fake video occurring. And as you can see, the monthly increases during the rest of the year. Then they start to taper off during 2020. Now, this is just supposition on my part, but I'm guessing like the news cycles we have here in the US, you know, something makes big headlines and even affects outcomes, whether it's about COVID-19 shots or fake political news or whatever. Then another story takes command of the news cycle and people tend to forget about the old story and they concentrate on the new. And I'm guessing that may be what happened here. That is, after a period of time, parents started allowing to have their children vaccinated again because the story was old and their interest was elsewhere at this point. Now, this is no scientific study, just my gut feeling. But as 2020 progressed, you can see that the cases taper off to zero in the month of December. It's also been noted that part of this reduction could possibly be due to less traveling during the pandemic. And oh, I almost forgot to show you that annual chart again, this time with the current year in it. 2 cases, that was mentioned earlier, only 2 cases of wild polio virus. Look at that, you can't even see the red line there. That's how, that's how little it is. So this is fantastic. We have never been in this position. Once again, we have overcome adversity. And now you may have noticed that I have referred to the polio virus as the wild polio virus. And while we can certainly celebrate the lack of wild polio cases, we remember we have another battlefront to contend with before we can declare the world polio free. And that is the circulating vaccine-derived polio. You know, the original Sabin oral vaccine, which is currently what we're using, it uses a live attenuated virus, a weakened virus that in rare instances can mutate back to full strength in the environment and cause paralysis in a child. And statistically speaking, about 1 in every 2.3 million doses. This occurs especially in under-immunized communities, and even more so if they're downstream from well-immunized communities where contaminated water and sewage can affect unprotected children. You know, some people have recently referred to the vaccine-derived polio as polio's equivalent to COVID-19's Delta variant. But I have some good news for you. There's a new vaccine that they're calling a novel oral polio vaccine, referred to as NOPV2. In development for the last 10 years, it just received, not just, last November, it received its emergency use listing. And like the original Sabin vaccine, it uses a live attenuated virus. But unlike the Sabin vaccine, it has been genetically engineered to be more stable, less likely to mutate back to full strength. This means it can help address those vaccine-derived outbreaks more sustainably. This, in my humble opinion, folks, is a game changer. 7 countries in Central Africa, where most of the outbreaks are occurring, have already used it. They've delivered over 100 million doses with no after effects. And 33 more countries, are in the pipeline to start using the new vaccine. The principal advocate and financial provider of funds for this project was the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Total cases so far this year of vaccine-derived polio stand at 444, quite a few. But that compared with last year's 607, means that we are making a big improvement, even with only 7 countries starting to use this. And as you can see with these numbers, we are definitely getting a handle on this Delta variant of the polio virus. Okay, now a quick refresher. The Global Polio Eradication Initiative, or GPEI as it's often referred to, was formed by Rotary and the World Health Organization in 1988. GPEI is the controlling agency behind the fight against polio, and it's made up of the 6 organizations seen on the screen there. Besides Rotary and the World Health Organization, the CDC, Center for Disease Control, UNICEF, the United Nations Children's Fund, and in 2007, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation joined us. And then last year, Gavi joined us too, and they are the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunizations. And now, why do I mention this? Well, because GPEI recently rolled out their new endgame strategy called Polio Eradication Strategy 2022 to 2026, delivering on a promise. Events such as the pandemic and the conflict, ongoing conflict, made the 2019 to 23 strategy obsolete and in need of revision. Development of this new strategy began in July of last year and was just completed in March of this year. It's led by a multi-partner working group totaling 71 organizations, some of those with epidemiological, technical, managerial, and operational expertise. This external engagement is the most extensive to date of any GPEI strategy and was completed this last March, as I mentioned. They just published their executive summary on this strategy. And you can, if you want your own copy, you can get it by going to GPEI's website, polioeradication.org. It's a long read, but basically it breaks the strategy down into 2 goals: permanently interrupt the transmission of all poliovirus in Afghanistan and Pakistan, and that's both the wild and the vaccine derived. And then the second step is stop the transmission of the circulating vaccine derived polio in all other countries that are currently affected. And now the timeline of this is they aim to accomplish this by 2026. And if you look at this timeline, they've even given themselves a couple years cushion. We are already into 9 months without a single case. And 3 more years, technically speaking, could be earlier than 2026. So, you know, it's a good position to be in now. And some folks have asked, you know, after 35 years, why should we continue to support Polio Plus? Isn't 99.9% good enough? Can't we go after another disease or parasite? Well, I have an answer for them. No, because we haven't finished the job yet. Yeah, you know, it's true that it's taken us much longer than anyone ever anticipated. And as a matter of fact, incoming RI President-elect Jennifer Jones, she said, you know, if we knew it was going to take us this long, we probably wouldn't have started the project in the first place. But we did. And if we quit now, all of that work will be for naught. To have come this far and created this unique opportunity to eliminate this disease from the face of the earth and then quit and let polio reinfect the world, no, that's just not an option. It's not going to happen on my watch. You know, we've already saved an estimated 19 million children from paralysis, 19 million who are walking on this earth instead of crawling, and another 1.5 million from death. So we are already making a huge difference, and we have to continue when we're so close to winning. You know, the problem's not science. We've already proven it can be done, right? The problem is political and social, and that can be overcome with perseverance and tenacity. And believe me, Rotarians have plenty of those qualities, don't we? And let me give you an example. Just before the fall of the old Afghan regime last month or month before now, through the magic of Rotary and its GPEI partners, we had been negotiating with the Taliban to allow vaccinations to take place in mosques. And we had just received approval for that from the Taliban before the fall of Kabul. And now that the war is over, and I'm saving the best for last, it was just announced on the 19th by our GPEI partners, WHO and UNICEF, that the Taliban have agreed to allow polio vaccination program to restart in Afghanistan. Yes, and furthermore, they have agreed for women to be the frontline workers which is critical to the success of our eradication efforts. You know, due to gender norms in some societies like Afghanistan, only women can access households to interact with mothers and deliver polio vaccines to their children. Furthermore, the Taliban will providing the security for the workers as they make their rounds. They've already planned a 5-day nationwide campaign, which is going to take place starting November 8th. The goal is to reach 10 million children, and 3.3 million of those children have remained inaccessible these last 3 years to vaccination campaigns. We'll also be distributing vitamin A supplements at the same time, putting a plus in Polio Plus. So this is a very exciting news. And lastly, of course, we have to continue this battle because, as we are all painfully aware, polio is only a plane ride away. A virus is whether it's measles, like 2 years ago, COVID, like right now, or God forbid, polio in the future, as long as one child anywhere in the world has a polio virus, children everywhere in the world are in danger of contracting it. You know, it's estimated if we stop vaccinating now, in 10 years, there will be 200,000 new cases of polio per year, and the financial costs will be astronomical. And speaking of costs, fighting polio is not cheap. The 2021 budget is $1.034 billion. Now I was going to drop the $0.034 billion, but then I got to thinking about it. I wrote it out. That's $1.034 billion to vaccinate 400 million children. That works out to about $2.60 per dose, but that includes getting a dose to them, not just the cost of the dose. This chart here shows the 2020 contributions to Gpei, and you can see the partners of Gpei are in orange, and that's the Gates Foundation and the US government and Rotary. And we make up roughly almost 3/4, 73% actually, of the total budget. And Rotary's share in dollar terms was about 150 million, which is about 14%. And of course, we are very thankful for the contributions of our non-partner donors depicted in blue here. This pie chart gives you an idea of how the money was spent in 20 and 21. It shows Rotary's 150 million went to, the vast majority went to getting vaccines to children, which includes the cold chain, the stipends for frontline workers and their transportation, whether it's vehicle, mule, camel, motorbike, dugout, canoe, you name it. 1/4 was spent on the vaccines themselves, and 12% in detecting the disease with our 146 labs that we have throughout the world, testing sewage samples and stool samples. And then 20% raising awareness of the campaign, like letting parents know of upcoming vaccination dates, various PR events like World Polio Day, social media, etc. And as outlined in GPEI's new strategy, we have to continue to raise these funds to vaccinate children to beat this disease for another 5 years. Towards that effort, I'm sure you've all heard about the Polio Plus Society. And to tell you more about it, here's your own District 5520 Polio Plus Chair, Nikki Mcdonald. Besides both of us being Rotarians, Nikki and I have one other thing in common. I think it was mentioned earlier. We are both polio survivors. Take it away, Nikki.
Thank you, Bob. Good morning, everybody. I am unabashedly asking you all to consider the Polio Plus Society. It asks Rotarians to make a commitment to donate a minimum of $100 per year to our World Polio Fund, and to continue to do so every year until the world is declared polio-free by the World Health Organization, hopefully 2026. Society members will receive a pin like the one on the screen, depicting a child receiving the 2 magic drops. They will also receive an In Polio Now wristband, which you can also see, and of course, a certificate proclaiming you a member of the Polio Society. Of course, you'll receive recognition points towards your Paul Harris, and your donation will be tripled by the Gates 2-to-1 match program. I hope you'll consider joining your fellow Rotarians in this worthwhile cause. When you join, you are making a pledge not only to Rotary, but to yourself to stay in this fight till the end, till the planet is free of polio virus forever. You can go to our district website at rotary5520.org to download a copy of the sign-up form or contact me at Nikki Mcdonald 1949 @gmail.com for details on how to join. My email is easy to remember. It's Nikki, Nikki, Mcdonald, not Nick, and 1949, the year I was born. This is a two-step process. First, email me your commitment letter so that I can get you registered as a society member. And second, go to my.rotary.org/donate and hit the polio icon to donate. I hope Bob and I have convinced you all of the importance of staying in the fight to the end and to demonstrate our commitment by joining the Polio Plus Society. I'd like to leave you with one last message that Bob and his cycling mates chanted at the finish line of a 6-day Pedal for Polio fundraiser his district did a few years back. Join if you feel so inclined.
End polio now! End polio now! End polio now! End polio now! End polio now!
Yeah! Those folks are in better condition than me, so I appreciate that video. Thank you all. And now I'd like to introduce Bob Reed, Global Grants Chair.
Good morning. You'll need to stop sharing. There you go. All right. Let's see now. All right. Can you see my screen yet?
Yeah,
Yes.
looks good, Bob.
Great. This is all due to Jesse. I want to thank him for all of his technical advice because I would have shown you mine upside down or sideways. In any case, Linda, just from a time check standpoint, I understand I have an hour. I'm just kidding, just kidding. I know you all have to understand that Linda's specialty is in keeping my time constrained. So my goal today basically is for anybody participating today who has not yet participated in a global grant to kind of get you excited about it. And for those of you who have, I'd like to be able to get you to sort of develop that itch again, because Rotary does so many wonderful things around the world. We've heard so much today about many wonderful things, including ending polio and district grants, et cetera, but this is about global grants, and this is an opportunity to be able to sort of move things beyond borders, if you will. I will tell you that I've been a Rotarian now for 25 years, a quarter of a century. I know I don't look old enough for that. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate that laugh. But I didn't find my footing in Rotary, my sense of place, until I started participating in international service through global grants. And since that point in time, I have become an enthusiastic Rotarian, involved, I hope, across the spectrum of the purpose and function of Rotary, but with a particular commitment to global grants. So, you know, there are many ways to participate in Rotary, and there are folks who are not enthusiastic about international service. And I thought I might take a second and just talk a little bit about what I've heard in this regard. And this comes from, frankly, my own club, Hobbs, where I will continue to be a member, even though I'm physically located in Rio Rancho, until we finish out our last global grant project. But moving on, we hear a lot that people talk about the fact that we have local problems, and we do. We have many challenges in the communities in which we live. And I've heard very many times, well, Why should we be involved in international service when we have needs locally? And you know, from my experience, having gotten involved, I might have been in that place had I not participated in some international projects. But the level of need that I've been exposed to in different parts of the world since tell me that there's a very special need. And one of the wonderful things about the brotherhood and sisterhood of Rotary is that we look beyond international borders. And I have come to believe that if there's suffering anywhere left unchecked, eventually that suffering will find its way to your porch. So if we can help alleviate suffering, if we can improve the human circumstance anywhere around the world, we're helping humans everywhere around the world. So people say, well, you know, the issues are just too complicated. They're just too difficult to address. And so why should we even bother? And others will say, if I can't get to a certain scale, if I can't have a strategy that really has dramatic impact, I don't see why I should participate. And in my view, that I often refer to that as the arrogance of scale. You know, I believe that I have a very small space in this world that I occupy, and then I'm responsible for doing what I can, not for what I can't. And so very often I find that people who have shared with me these three concerns, when I come back and ask them what they're involved in, very often they're not. So sometimes these can be excuses for not being involved in the service of others. And I'm not saying that these aren't serious issues. They are, however. We all know the story of the boy on the at the beach who was throwing the starfish back that had washed up on the shore. And this elderly gentleman walks up to him and says, "Yeah, what are you doing? You can't save all of those starfish." And he thought about it for a while, looked back at them and said, "Yeah, but the ones that I threw back, I did have an impact on." And so I think for me, it's not what I can't do that I need to focus on, but instead, what can I do? Where can I have an impact? And if I save one life, if I change one life, then my life of service is really worthwhile. And I don't know where my responsibility ends and somebody else's picks up, but I know if we all take that attitude, we have a different world. So you really can do this. And I want to encourage you to think of this as not some mysterious kind of level of involvement. It's not. It's very straightforward. If somebody like me can do this, anybody can do this. And I have, through my club in Hobbs, had the opportunity to be involved in several projects. I will tell you that I have been told that a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I'm going to rapidly take you through some photos to give you a feel for experiences on the ground. We have done 6 global grants, including one that we're just starting on right now in Kenya. We've focused on South America, but frankly, that work has led us beyond global grants to be involved in a variety of other things. So we have projects in Ecuador, in Colombia, one that we're looking at in Argentina. We have a couple of projects in Tanzania and one that is coming up in Kenya. Not all of which have been global grants. We found different ways to be of service, but 6 have resulted in global grants. The first is the Maternal and Child Health Project in Bolivia, where something like 80% of women do not receive prenatal care, do not understand the need for it, and child mortality is off the charts. And so we did a variety of educational programs. We took healthcare professionals with us, physicians and nurse practitioners, to go down and do free clinics. We helped change a level of awareness between the local villagers and, frankly, the healthcare clinic that was always there that didn't even know how to work with the indigenous populations that we worked with. Another one was to focus on literacy for women. In places like Bolivia, and it's not limited to Bolivia, women are treated as second-class citizens. It's tragic that they're denied the opportunity of an education. Most only go to the first grade, cannot read, cannot write, which traps them in perpetual poverty and prevents them from being able to improve their circumstances. So we went in and we taught hundreds of women how to read and write. It was really exciting. I got up in front of a village and delivered a speech in Spanish, and it was really tortured. It was awful. I often have to apologize for my English and tell people I'm very sorry that it's not very good. It's just the only language I speak. So I really tried hard to do this, and I sat down, and Carrie from El Paso was sitting next to me and said, as we listened to this young woman who had never read a word before, read before the entire group flawlessly from this book that you see right here. Carrie said, Bob, she just put you to shame. Really exciting stuff, but we changed permanently the perspective, the experience of these women and their ability to work with their children. And for those young girls to look up to their mothers who can now read and can write and are full participants. Just look at the faces, look at the sense of self-confidence they have as a result of this opportunity. This is an experience we had where we delivered meals to women while they were going through their training. And one night we put all the meals together for the 50 women we invited, and 70 showed up. And I went, oh my God, how are we going to, I was just horrified that somehow we weren't going to have enough meals. And the whole time I'm going through it and I'm saying fishes and loaves and fishes and loaves. I'll be damned, the last sandwich went to the last woman, and we don't know how that happened. Everybody got a sandwich, which was just amazing. That kind of stuff happens over and over again. You get connected to people and you find out through international service, they're not all that different than we are. They're just the same. They just have less opportunities. We then moved into creating economic opportunities for women in the same village, where we trained them in entrepreneurialism skills. And then we brought in experts who were able to help them learn specific vocational skills. And we launched a series of businesses. You may see some of your friends from 5520 in some of these photos. There are many, many Rotarians who traveled with us every year to go down and work on these projects. We launched several businesses, women-owned businesses, where they now have control over their own economic circumstances. Just look at the faces of satisfaction of these women who have these bakeries now. These aprons were created by women through the sewing cooperatives. All of the uniforms purchased by the municipalities in the area now come from these women. It's incredible that they feel like they own the space they stand on. They no longer are second-class citizens. They're full participants in what they do. We were then asked by some neighbor communities if we could help them develop water, access to clean water. Because of climatic changes, they were having to walk miles to get water and physically transport it all the way back to their village in non-hygienic containers. Waterborne illnesses were permeating the area and children were dying. We were able to create these ingenious water access, water accumulation systems. They don't have any rivers or lakes or anything like that. So what we did is we built these systems that for the day of the year that they get rain, we harvest all of it, store it underground, and then purify it. And now all of a sudden, year round, they have water and sanitation systems. The joy that these folks had and the ability then to be able to live lives in the ways that they had for so long, supporting their agriculture and their style of life, was life-giving to them. And we've been able to do this now for 4 different communities. This is the club president from Hobbs. This young woman here, Megan, was digging ditches so that we could bring the pipes for the water system in. We did all the stuff that we were qualified to do, which was mostly manual labor, because we partnered with a nonprofit organization that contributed all of the engineering capability that we needed to make this thing work. Even these bags that you can see here were made by the women for these projects. We then moved on. Bolivia had a revolution just a couple of years ago, and they desperately needed a way to create more leadership around building peaceful conditions. So this last year, we trained about 100 college students on how to be peace leaders. And we brought in Rotary Peace Fellows to design the curriculum. We brought in new gen peace builders and mediators beyond borders to bring in the appropriate expertise. And they did a magnificent job of teaching these folks. And now we have a network, a substantial network of young people across Bolivia who are perpetuating this training for leadership for peaceful outcomes, following Rotary's guidelines with respect to peace building. We're moving on now to working with women in Kenya. We got an invite to come in and help women who are HIV positive, who many of which were forced into sexual slavery and contracted HIV, and then their communities and their families and everybody turned their backs on them. These are human souls. They have access, fortunately, thank God, to the medications that they need to sustain their lives. But what they did not have were the support mechanisms to be able to find their own humanity, their own sense of self-worth, and the entrepreneurialism skills to be able to provide for themselves. And that's what we're going to be focusing on for this next year. So I don't want to delay this, but I noticed that on the contact list that went out, my contact information was not included in that. So I've quickly put that in here for you. This is my email address and this is my phone number. Feel free to reach out to me if you're interested in pursuing a global grant. And there are people on this call or on this session who know far more than I'll ever know about global grants. So please, I don't mean to be arrogant in this regard, but if I can be of service to you, call me, email me. I will be delighted to sit down and talk with you about global grants and try to lend any assistance that I can that would help you in positioning yourself to be successful with a global grant. So that said, Linda, back to you.
Thank you very much, Bob. It is indeed my pleasure now to bring up our beloved Tom Walker. Look at him. Okay, Tom, you have to unmute, Tom.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jesse. And thank you, Governor Linda. This morning, you've heard from experts in a number of disciplines, and I hope to address a segment called Why We Support Our Foundation, or more specifically, why I support my foundation. And I'm pleased to be with you for this segment. The reason I call the Rotary Foundation our foundation is firstly, because as Rotarians, we financially support the foundation. And secondly, because of the foundation's mission statement that says the foundation enables Rotarians to advance world understanding, goodwill, and peace by improving health, providing quality education, improving the environment, and alleviating poverty. I'm guessing somewhere in there is the reason that each and every one of us joined Rotary. And I understand that you've heard something like this at one time or another, but we have so many needs right here in River City. Why should we send our money off to Evanston? And several of the speakers have said something similar. In the short time we have, I hope to provide you with some answers and help you to understand that the Rotary Foundation is a benefit of your membership in Rotary. First, of course, are our foundation programs, and you've heard Governor Rick talk about the district grants that his club does, and Bob talk about global grants that his club has done. And these are the programs that many of us are familiar with. And global grants include the 7 areas of focus, and something that we don't often talk about, but includes global scholarships. And right now we have 2 of those opens. This is the rough equivalent of the old ambassadorial scholar program, but it's funded through a global grant. And there are other things like vocational training teams. You've heard about polio, certainly an excellent presentation by Bob Rogers and Nikki. We've also done disaster response grants in this district. And of course, there are the Peace Centers and Peace Fellows that are funded through the Rotary Foundation. Now, I know that my club, the Rotary Club of Albuquerque, has over the years participated in 83 matching and global grants all over the world, including right here in Albuquerque. And the total worth of these projects is $2.7 million. But due to partnering and matching, Albuquerque's share of these grants was only $217,000. And this is important because we're all working together. I think Bob was talking about a cooperating organization or 2. Governor Rick talked about he was partnering on his district grants with people. This enables us to stretch the impact of our dollars in work that we give to the Rotary Foundation. I know also in the typical year, about half of our clubs participate in district grant projects. And every year, of course, Rotarians raise that $50 million for polio eradication, which the Gates Foundation matches with another $100 million. That's $2 for one. Now, notice with your gift to every Rotarian every year, which is also known as the annual fund, or EREY, we get to decide how we use half of our money. Remember that I said a minute ago that the foundation is your membership benefit. I want you all to think for just a moment of your employee benefits through your work. Probably the most prominent and important employee benefit you have is what? I'm guessing your answer might be your 401k. Now, the trick with your 401k is that it's up to you to put money into your 401k. Your employer is providing you with this benefit opportunity, but at the end of the day, it's up to you to invest in yourself for the future. This is similar to how your membership benefit with the Rotary Foundation work. We count on Rotarians to invest in the future of the work that they want to do in the world. Through the share program, half of our gift comes to EREY, or the annual fund, or the endowment fund is shared equally between the World Fund and us, just like Eric talked about earlier. The World Fund funds the foundation's programs, which are principally matching global grant DDF or district designated funds, as well as contributions to funding other Rotary priorities. As I said before, we get to decide how we're going to use our half of share, which is DDF or district designated funds. Our clubs also, and our members also have the option of funding the peace program, polio eradication, disaster response, and all sorts of global grants in the 7 areas of focus. Notice in all of these programs, we're partnering with other clubs and other districts and other organizations to fund projects that none of us could afford to fund on our own. When you contribute to the annual fund through a share investment program, half of your gift becomes available for our district and our clubs to use however they choose. And I think Eric shared an example of how share works. Districts that are active in both district grants and global grants, such as District 5520, get the full impact of the gifts made by their members through our annual fund share program. The funds that your district has access to this year, which is the FY22 year, come from our contributions made 3 years ago during the 18-19 Rotary year. That's why it's so important for our members to invest in the annual fund share every year to ensure funding for our good work in the future. One aspect of the Rotary Foundation that's very important to many of our donors is what I'll call stewardship. We want our donors to know that we appreciate their gifts, that their gifts support worthwhile, impactful projects, that they know their gifts will get to where they were intended and will be used for the purposes that they were given. In years gone by, sustainability wasn't high on our priority list. So often back then, a year after a project was completed, there was little to no indication that Rotary had been there. Sustainability in our projects now means that the project will continue after we have left. Accountability is another aspect that doesn't get a lot of attention. First, Rotary funds go Rotarian to Rotarian to make sure they don't get diverted. As an aside, that's why your club president gets your district grant check instead of your treasurer. The president's signature is on the district grant application. And did you know that district grants are reviewed each year by the district audit committee? And global and disaster response grants are reviewed by the Rotary Foundation with periodic on-site inspections possible, especially for large grants. I don't think we've had one on the projects that we've been involved in a long time. And I have a question for you. Does your club foundation get a report on the projects they write checks for? Well, if the Rotary Foundation's involved, they're all reviewed. And one other question I would ask you, who has read the district's annual Foundation Committee report lately? That's your Rotary Foundation Committee telling you how all of the foundation related funds were spent. And as Eric mentioned, the Rotary Foundation has 4-star management as evaluated by Charity Navigator, the premier organization for evaluating charities. That's their highest rating. And Rotary Foundation has received it for 14 straight years. This past year, we received a rating of 99.4 on a scale of 100. So you can have confidence in your Rotary Foundation's management. And of course, there are very many ways that we recognize our donors and clubs for their support of the Rotary Foundation. Here are many of the individual recognitions available. And I won't go over these because Eric mentioned some of them, but we're all familiar with the Paul Harris Fellow. And the Paul Harris Society member is a person that pledges to give $1,000 a year to the Rotary Foundation. Nikki mentioned the Polio Plus Society and the great impact that that will have on our polio giving. Major donors give at least $10,000. Arts Club Society starts at $250,000. Benefactors give at least $1,000 or pledge to do so to the Endowment Fund. Bequest Society members make a bequest of at least $10,000, and Legacy Society members make a commitment of at least $1 million. Now, you've heard some very large numbers in there, and you might be surprised to know that in District 5520, we have at least one of every one of those. And for people that say, well, major donor is out of reach for me, I will tell you from my experience as foundation chair that most often people make the commitment as a Paul Harris Society member, and they meet that commitment year after year. And before you know it, you've contributed enough to become a major donor. So we want to recognize you for your support of the Rotary Foundation's mission. And we want this to be a long and lasting membership and relationship with Rotary, and for you to leave a lasting Rotary legacy. And there are also recognitions for clubs. The one that we see most often is the 100% Paul Harris Fellow Club. Governor Rick mentioned that Rio Rancho Sunrise reached that recognition level in 2015 and 16. We have a little over 20 clubs in that category right now. I don't think we have 100% Paul Harris Society club, but that's a challenge that maybe we ought to. And then there are gifts for, or recognitions for various annual giving, E-Ray, 100% sustaining members and all that, which are available. And lastly, Rotary and the Foundation are special. Why? Well, we act both locally and globally. We partner, or as my grandmother Lewis used to say, many hands make light the work. We partner with other Rotarians and Rotary clubs. We partner with other organizations, and you've seen some of them here, the WHO, Gpei, the Gates Foundation, and so forth. We have unique access and reach. Bob Rogers mentioned this, in that we can get into places in Afghanistan and Pakistan that governments cannot reach, churches cannot reach, but they trust us. Why? Because we're apolitical and we're not going to proselytize. They know that we are there just to do good in the world. And we give to support our club and district. We give to support our projects. Bob Reed talked about how Hobbs is providing support for a wide variety of global grants and other grants overseas. And because Rotary and the Rotary Foundation address all of mankind's greatest needs. So at this point, I would like to point out, who can I ask if I have questions? Well, first of all, you've got an excellent foundation team, and I've listed them all there. And Bob, I think I got you on there. And this is a foundation team, and they work extremely hard. Also, there are people outside of the district that you can help. Several of them are with us today. Our Rotary coordinator, Lou General, made an excellent presentation. Our major gifting officer, Eric Thompson, works with me and members of this district. Bob Rogers is one of a tandem supporting the combined zones for getting rid of polio. And if you can't sense his energy and enthusiasm about polio, we're going to have to adjust the gain on your hearing aid. And of course, I'm here to help with endowments and major gifts. So that is the story of why you and I ought to support the Rotary Foundation. Governor Linda.
Thank you. And I will tell you, my signal is very weak, so if you lose, I do apologize. So very quickly, I thank you to one and all. You have been over the top, more than I could have ever dreamed in putting this program together. And for those sat in the seat, you were phenomenal. I appreciate so much you giving up your Saturday for Rotary, for your clubs, and for you. Please remember, next week, the 13th, I know it's getting close to holiday. You're thinking about that big bird, but it's by district. And you're probably thinking, oh, my club's not going to do a grant. Please, we worked hard. The pamphlet that went out, look at it. If nothing else, come. You can sit in the seat again. This is the last time we're doing virtual. Take a look, see what we're doing. Maybe next year you'll want to participate, but please look and see what my district is all about. And one last thing, our life's goal is to be of service for the good. Whatever that call is, wherever it takes you, remember it's about Rotary, and Rotary can help us get there. Jesse?
I have nothing else to add.
You've got something to play.
Jesse, will you be making the recordings and the PowerPoints available?
Yes. Yes,
Great.
they will. And
Jesse, you're
there
muted.
again, if I'm muted.
Jesse is muted.
Oh, yes, he is.
You know, I think we've just added a new term to our vocabulary. You're muted.
Right. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Raindrops fall from the
we will
sky.
have it.
They may be small, but together they make a mighty ocean. In the same way, your commitment to doing good in the world enables the Rotary Foundation to fund the projects that you care about. Last year, even during a pandemic, hundreds of thousands of donors like you gave more than $440 million. Your generosity allowed the foundation to fund more than 2,000 global grants, creating opportunities for people everywhere to respond to their community's unique needs. A $15 donation could buy polio vaccines. A water filter cost only $50. And $100 could provide COVID-19 training. You supported causes such as fighting disease, building strong communities, and promoting lasting peace. So whether you gave $1 or $1 million, you gave help and hope. The people whose lives you've touched, the families, the parents, the children, thank you. And so do we.